June 20th, 2015, the Ochelli Effect is on here on ucy.tv. Oh, man, thank you for tuning in at ucy.tv/TOE, where I do appreciate it. If you go and visit there, of course, there is the links to the YouTube playlist, the MP3 downloads tabs, so you can go check out other shows, etc., etc. Lots of different stuff there, plus a whole bunch of different ways that you can listen to the show. And I do appreciate you if you decide to utilize your fondle slab of choice and check it out via your applications. All is appreciated. Tonight, this is kind of a funny thing, and I'm going to bring up my guest here to start with. This is pretty funny. Let's see here. All right. So, blind man trying to add somebody to the call. And it says it's not responding. Well, gee, I don't even know if I'm still on the air. Good deal. The Skype just froze on me. Awesomeness. How long will this take to fix? Come on, come on. Well, anyway, I had one guest in mind scheduled for the past week and a half, and we were going to discuss the bloodlines of the Illuminati with Fritz Springmeier, but I was trying to get a hold of him yesterday, the day before, and today, and make sure that he was still coming on, because that's one of those things I always have to do is follow up on an interview, and I've got a totally frozen Skype. Nice. Anyway, it is the technological revolt continuing. So hopefully I'm still on the air. Anyhow, as I was saying, Fritz Springmeier was going to come on. I definitely thought this was especially fascinating because wasn't Bloodlines of the Illuminati one of the books that was on the alleged Osama bin Laden bookshelf, according to the FBI details that were recently released about that whole puppet show, that whole meat puppet show? Boy, oh boy. This is hysterical. What do you do when it says Skype not responding, I wonder? James Easton, if you're listening to me, go right ahead and call in. I'll give you a couple of minutes to hear that because I'm literally stuck frozen here, and hopefully it'll give me the option to add you to the call if you call in. So go right ahead and do so. Of course, I'll also take phone calls during this hour at 718-717-8296 while I'm trying to straighten out my technical difficulties. Gotta love it. Anyway, so Fritz Springmeier was supposed to be the guest tonight, and I thought that would be a fascinating topic. Wasn't quite sure how I would come down on the subject, et cetera, et cetera. But I was messaging him and saying, hey, let's make sure that you're coming on tomorrow night. Let's make sure you're coming on tonight, et cetera, et cetera. And what I got was nothing. I didn't even see that he had checked the message. So, as has happened before, somebody turns around and has a personal issue, something else, regardless of the work they do or whatever. If they have a death in the family, a tragedy, a car accident, an injury, a trip to the hospital, sometimes people don't show up. Things happen. That is the random nature of the universe. So I assumed that either I was being blown off, and again, I don't know Mr. Springmeier, so did not know whether he was, one of the more steadily, easily booked people that is always responsible about their engagements or not. I imagine that he is, and I always assume that guys that have done other shows and things like that are, and I generally assume people to be extremely responsible, but again, just assuming and hoping that nothing bad had happened to the man, because that has happened to me before where somebody got very, very sick when they were scheduled to do my show, and you guys didn't even get to hear about it, and some people have even, a couple of people have even passed away when I was working on scheduling them for this show. That's happened a couple of times. But weirdness is weirdness, and sometimes people have even tried to call me on the wrong day. Dates have gotten screwed up, and I even had that situation with a guest from New Zealand who, or was it? Let me see. Was it New Zealand or was it Australia? Either way, over on that side of the globe, where we had a complete misunderstanding over what time of day was what, and he was calling me at 1:30 in the afternoon trying to get on my show, which, as you guys know, would be, 7 hours off for Saturday night, and of course would be, 5 hours off for my weekday shows and all that kind of stuff. So he's calling me at a time of day saying, hey, I'm ready, where are you? And I'm telling him that, well, gee, we had an understanding about this, and somehow or other, although we agreed on exactly what time it was, he came up with the idea that it was at a different time of day. So it was kind of funny, and I was able to straighten that out, but at least that was something that happened ahead of time. I've also had somebody think that they were supposed to talk to me on, say, a Wednesday, and I don't have a show on Wednesdays. So don't know how that ends up happening when I sit there and I double confirm and say, here's the date, here's the day, here's the time. You know what? I am going to actually have to probably cut my Skype off and restart in order to run my show. This is going to suck, so I'm probably going to be off the air for like a minute. All right, be right back. If it allows me to close it. All right, that should put me back on the air. Gotta love this stuff. Let's just see now if I can add Mr. Easton into the phone call. Hey, James.
Hey, yes.
All right, do me a favor, shut your video off though.
Okay.
Because God help me, the Skype went into revolt and decided to stop responding and froze on me.
Okay.
On top of the fact, I'm trying to explain this whole thing that happened here with the guest I had previously scheduled.
Okay.
So, and this is not just me making up things for the sake of conversation, but literally, I had Fritz Springmeier on to talk about Bloodlines of the Illuminati. That's who I scheduled. Mm-hmm. And what happened was, again, I sent messages to him and wasn't receiving confirmation back that he was definitely coming tonight.
Right.
So I said, what the hell? I've been wanting to do a show with James anyway. And you and I are in contact just we're just friends. So I said, hey, you feel like coming on tonight? And you said, sure. And this was only a couple hours ago, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, so meanwhile, I get ready to do the show. I put out a graphic with you and get my mind set. We're going to talk 9/11 instead of who's part of whose bloodline, et cetera, et cetera. And what happens? But Springmeyer pops up a couple of minutes before I'm supposed to go on air and says, I'm here. I'm ready to do the show.
Right.
And I want to go into that topic. I think it's a fascinating topic.
Hmm.
So I invited him to go on to Jaded real quick, just trying to think of, I don't want to lose that interview, but also, so he'll be on Jaded anyway. We're going to talk about Bloodlines of the Illuminati on the Jaded show tonight. James Easton, even though I had to waste time with technological problems here,
Hmm.
okay, because literally, have you ever seen your Skype say it's not responding?
It depends on your computer. If you've been running it a long time, there's memory leaks and stuff in Windows. I don't know if you're using Windows.
Yeah, I am.
I have issues. On my slower computer, I always had trouble with Skype.
Yeah, see, this is a fairly new computer, and this is like Windows 8.1, which has been more of a nightmare for me. I mean, XP was wonderful compared to this stuff, man.
Yeah, for
Ugh.
sure. Uh,
And
are we on air?
yeah, we're on air.
Okay. Woohoo!
I always forget to say that too. You're on the air. Yes,
yeah, you always forget that.
yeah, I do.
Anyways,
I do.
well, I just got
Well,
some disturb.
let me just
Yeah,
set
okay,
up the
you go ahead.
rest of
You
this
good?
because I'm losing my mind over here between technological problems and trying to juggle a guest like while my I know my intro is playing on air.
Right.
So I was lucky I even showed up on time.
Okay.
But hysterical stuff. So here's the deal. So Fritz Springmeier and Bloodlines of the Illuminati will cover in the Jaded show, which Kim is not too happy about, but that's what we're going to do. Uh, and I think she'll get happy because this will be stuff that she's not super familiar with, and hopefully we'll be able to just have a really good conversation.
Right.
Anyway, on my show, finally, about 12 minutes deep, I get to say that my guest tonight is James Easton. And of course, he is the individual who created 9/11 The Biggest Lie. And on top of that, has actually done a lot of different stuff trying to sort of awaken people regarding the great deception of 9/11. Now, of course, James is a proponent of the no planes explanation. And for those of you who don't know what that is, I'm very sure you're going to find out during this interview. In case you haven't heard me talk to James before, we are definitely going to hit upon the no planes thing, but also in recent times, James has also related to me the fact that he absolutely believes that there are many people who are sort of go-to guys in alternative media who are probably also involved in the cover-up just as badly, if not more deceptively, than the mainstream. So hopefully we'll touch upon that tonight as well. All right. And in general, I do want to wind up discussing the overall reason for why this is an important issue anyway, why this isn't just something that needs to be tucked away in the history books, etc., etc. And I did get in most of that video that you wanted me to see before we went on air today, and I've got something to say about that and the fact that I've had to sit and explain to so many people recently that we're all being had on so many different levels. It's not even funny.
That's right.
And and here's the thing. Don't trust me. Don't trust the guys that you think are your alternative media stream. Don't trust anybody. First of all, use your own judgment regarding what is and is not happening. Okay? Because a lot of people make all sorts of assertions and make many presentations to you, and they don't have evidence. It's a whole lot of hyperbole, and it's a whole lot of just sort of pontificating for the sake of causing a reaction. And they get it. People like Jones Corporation definitely get many, many reactions, okay, on a daily basis. And just for the audience's clarification, an unknown phone caller cannot be added into the show. I cannot do that, so you have to unblock your number if you're calling in. Okay. Now, it already rang twice with unknown phone caller, so Just wanted to get that out there. Okay, but let's just start from where we should start from, right, James?
Sure.
9/11, the biggest lie. Go ahead and give people, your 1 minute, 2 minute synopsis of what is the key important thing about this video and your collection of presentations that have garnered over a million views on YouTube and stuff like that. Not to mention all the broadcasts. I'm not sure how many people have been reached by a lot of these sort of impromptu broadcasts that you've done. I mean, there's been a couple of hundred of those as well,
Right.
all relating, essentially all relating to the 9/11 topic, but with a much larger goal in mind. So let's first go ahead and talk about the biggest lie, and then talk about that bigger overall picture.
All right. Well, 9/11, the biggest lie. I started in end of January 2013. It took 3 months, and by May, I had a prototype. And end of May, I refined it and I put it out, and it's been out. It's been out for over 2 years, and it's garnered 930,000 views. Now, it's not your standard 9/11 movie. What it does is it starts you off getting you familiar with the area, the towers, inside the towers, to techno music. And so I got a lot of beefs about the music, and it generated some controversies because it didn't fit the bill of what people expect should be a movie. But then I learned about shills and trolls, and people inject their negativity to detract from or destroy or whatever. Um,
And
but the
even
fact,
even people that aren't necessarily shills and trolls professionally or formally, there's also just such a thing as people that are just haters anyways, which happens. And when I said over a million views, of course, the first movie has 900 something thousand, but your combined stuff is well over a million views, is what I'm saying. So anyway, go ahead back
yeah,
with the beeps that you're going to get if you have any sort of reach out there, in any media. You're always going to get beefs with people, that's for sure, right? I mean, you got that kind of crap going, well, constantly still, right?
right. Well, my determination is that everybody is a critic. So everybody's got something to say, and it isn't always good. I take all constructive criticism, whether it's negative or positive, and I respond to it with, I either make changes later on, or I discard it. But usually I take in everything, except for just bullshit. People just throwing in negativity and putting you down. There's people that don't believe the fact that the truther side of it, so to speak. I started off as a truther, and then about 3 months after that movie was out, I started making 9/11 The Biggest Lie 2, to elaborate based on this constructive criticism I got. And I stumbled upon some videos on no planes, and I really, really got interested because what I was seeing told me there were no planes. So there's two.
Well,
Go ahead.
two things. I'm sorry, two things. One, let's qualify what a truther is, because a lot of people throw that term around. What do you mean when you're saying you started out as a truther? Because I mean, in a lot of cases, people would think that just searching for the truth that is not immediately being brought forth to the public would make you a truther, but that's not exactly what you mean, right?
Right. It is. That's right. In the movie 9/11: The Biggest Lie, I refer people to go to 9/11 Truth and AE 9/11, depending on their credentials and whatnot. And but since then, I'll get to that. The point being that when you jump in the pool, it's a pool, but it's there's other stuff in the pool. I don't know. I don't want to make an analogy with the pool. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to say I was green, and truther is an ambivalent term. It seems that 9/11 Truth has the monopoly on the idea of truth, and the term truther is a derivative of truth, which is, people want to be a part of a team that's on the right side of history, but as I'll get on later to explain, they're not the right side, and so um, Now, what I really wanted to get to is the 9/11: The Biggest Lie is a good movie. It's 2.5 hours long. It's nonstop go 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 explanation. I went on a diatribe for like 45 minutes. Like I didn't edit anything. I was new at this, so even though it's like people can tell it's an amateur job, they respect the fact that my heart was in it, and you can hear that. And I got out like according to Ken Doc, there are 25 hard facts you need to know, and in this movie, I unload about 23 of them just based on my own research. So I got out a lot of info that should determine for anyone watching the movie who has doubts about the fact that 9/11 was a lie, that it was a lie. And, I believe that anyone who actually sat through the 2.5 hours came out of that with more knowledge about the subject. And, I couldn't have done it without all the other groundwork laid down by James Corbett. And there's so many other uh, people that have worked very hard in the last 13 years. So this movie came out 11 years in. And one other thing I had going for me was that I'm a 3D artist, and I was able to design the towers in 3D, and that's attracted to some people. That I don't know what it is. It's like looking at a miniature model. People um, look at it and sort of identify with it, I think. But I did demonstrate the plane going into the tower and such. But that the 3D in that first movie is limited. Um, it's just I covered it all. I covered the seismic activity, the destruction of Tower 1, destruction of Tower 2, and I put it all to music, and it was like it was techno stuff, and it had a fast pace to it. So it it's an okay movie. It's not my favorite movie.
It's okay. I mean, look, and here's the thing: when we get into the no planes discussion, right? I've had this discussion with you a lot, and I'm still in a weird place with it because I don't know how to take some of this stuff. I mean, I've gotten to a point where I'm not sure. There was a point in time where I completely dismissed the idea of no planes, except in the obvious places, which I'm sorry, but when you're looking at what's supposed to be the aftermath of a plane crash in Shanksville, when you're looking at what's supposed to be the aftermath of a plane crash at the Pentagon, these are obvious cases to me where you don't have the proof of a plane at all. Okay. So where is the plane when it comes to those two places is a given as far as I'm concerned, unless, you're completely in line with the official story, which case I know you're not listening to my show. But the thing is, if you look at it, those are two really obvious striking areas, right? It's a little harder, though, to talk about no planes in Manhattan. And this is where you started to come into this and you started looking at these things and looking at other people's presentations. And I mean, how did you come from assuming there were planes to now absolutely saying that there were none?
There's one particular shot. Um, well, that alongside the towers falling down in 10 seconds, to me that was like a detonation. So that gives credence to the idea that there's other BS involved. You know, from day one, when I saw those towers come down till like 11 years later, it was always in my head that there was nefarious things going on. And to go along with your Shanksville and Pentagon story, it's supplemental in the idea that if there were no planes there, then it stands to reason there are no planes at the towers also. If they go with the whole airplane theme for the day, but there's no planes in two places, then there's a possibility there are no planes at the towers as well. But that's a weak one. I'll get to the harder stuff. Um, there's two movies. There's Psy Opera.
Mm.
Ace Baker made that movie. It's a series. There's like 9 episodes. It's probably about a 6 hour watch. Um, he's condensed into 3 hours. Now, there's things about him that I don't like, but his presentation and his intellect and the stuff he shows, personality aside, it doesn't matter what his personality is. What matters is the hard facts and the evidence. And yeah, he showed some stuff that really sort of made me see it in a new light. But again, the thing that stuck in my head was the Chopper 5 news shot. There, first of all, the anchorman I can't remember which station it was. It was Fox. He sounds like he's reading. He's like describing the first tower getting hit, and then the Chopper 5 news shot. They're way over in New Jersey. And,
Yeah, I think you're talking about the Fox News New York, because
right,
that's Channel 5, and that was WNYW in New York, or W excuse me, WNEW, I think it was in New York. At least that used to be their call letters.
right,
Interesting station, of course. That was one of the ones bought up in the Fox sweep, where they picked up a whole bunch of independent channels. That used to be a fully independent channel, and a lot of those channels actually that were once independents are actually their home is in New Jersey, like WWOR, which is Channel 9 in New York, is actually out of like Secaucus, New Jersey, or at least used to be. I don't know. Maybe they've changed their facilities ever since. But I know what you're talking about there, though, because it is really remarkable that on a lot of other newscasts, you find people getting emotional, getting wrapped up into the situation. But the guy on the Fox News channel or the Fox not News channel, excuse me, the Fox channel in New York does sound particularly scripted. I got to
right.
give you that.
And there's more to it. Like this is the scene with the nose in, nose out, and but it's not that got me. What it is he goes, and they're arriving on the scene. Well, they weren't. They were 5 miles away. The zoom was at the full wide angle. So he zooms in once, he zooms in again, he zooms in again, and he's right. He's got the towers in full view, and one more zoom, and whoop! There's the plane. It just shows up out of nowhere. And if you take that video and you rewind it, there's no plane in the previous zooms. It's like it appeared out of nowhere. And they have something on this chopper called a FLIR camera system.
Mm.
And the guy who was operating it was known for his avid video linear editing system abilities, skills, what have you. And when questioned about it, he was like full of crap. He didn't have an answer. He made up stuff that wasn't true. And then you got the nose in, nose out, which is another story altogether. But for that particular thing, where all you need is a mask layer. Like the towers are vertical, so you just need a square sort of cover over the towers, and you bring in a graphic and you fly it past the mask layer, and it looks like it passes Tower 1, and then there's the explosion. So that it's easy stuff. It's easy as pie. I'm a 3D artist. I do all kinds of video editing and that kind of stuff. I play with graphics. I play with this stuff. It's so easy what they did. And I'm absolutely 100% sure that this is what they did. Like, no doubt in my mind, because there's so much more to talk about. But now, when people will throw out the word hologram. There were no holograms. There's no such thing as a projected hologram. The military does not have this technology. There's no alien spaceships. There's no, this is all a bunch of horseshit, which is designed to obfuscate, to muddle the whole situation. The bad guys, and there are bad guys involved in this, in the cover-up, will inject fraudulent movies that will mess around with people's minds. There's one of that. As soon as you see it, you're like, "Oh my God, this is a smoking gun!" It's Building 7 coming down, and there's like crackles and explosions, and you're like, "Wow, this is it." Well, it's some jerk. He even gives his name, who faked everything. So there's a lot of stuff out there that's designed to throw you off course, and to sort of finish off with this News 5 chopper shot, there's the nose in, nose out, and then wham, they go fade to black, and they cut out the about 17 or 18 frames of video, and you could hear the guys go, "Oh my god!" like more as in not the tower just got hit, but oh my god, we screwed up major. So anyway, there's so much more to talk about the no planes.
Well, right. I mean, let's, again, I say this is one of those ideas that needs to be examined because, geez, if you have no planes whatsoever anywhere,
Then the whole thing's a lie.
then the whole thing's a lie. Which, you know what? Whether there were planes or not, the whole thing is a lie. I'm sorry. It
Yeah,
just
yeah,
is.
yeah, totally.
Okay, there, and look, if at some point you discovered that the evidence misled you to believe that there were no planes and you found that there were planes, you'd still have to say that this is all a big pile of crap. There's nothing being told that's being truthful, and of course, not just in the mainstream, but there's a whole lot of people out there that claim to be alternative, that are claiming to get at the truth, and et cetera, et cetera. And what they're doing, in a lot of cases, is throwing out some of the worst, poorly founded possibilities to sort of get people to follow behind them, so they can run everybody off the cliff regarding the truth. Because after all, if these idiots believe in things that are absolutely fictitious, then what is their point of even asking questions? It kind of invalidates the entire question, or the greatest assumption here, which is that we're all being lied to about these events. So, yeah, that's
Well,
exactly how that works, right?
yeah. 9/11 has three layers of deception to it. There's the official story, which is a lie,
Mm-hmm.
which involves two commercial airliners hitting the towers. The second layer is the one that AE 9/11 Truth and 9/11 Truth and Loose Change and Alex Jones all portend that are the truth, and I contend that they are lying, and I'll get into that. Is that it was military planes. You have witnesses that say they saw a military plane. Some say the plane was gray. Some say the plane has no windows. Some say the plane had a flight termination system on it. In fact, you can see this in the pictures and video. And so that's the second layer. And the third layer is that's all bullshit. There were no planes. Everything you saw was pyrotechnics, and there's specific floors that were targeted. They justify this with saying that the planes were drones that were homed in guidance system. But the idea that if you look at the Hazarkani shot, which is like the dead giveaway, made by a guy who's a diamond merchant from California who was standing in Battery Park, just so happened to be looking at Tower 2. His focus was on Tower 2, and all this stuff can be reconstructed, but what you see is the plane go into the building. It just gets enveloped. There's no resistance. There's no deceleration. There's no bending. There's no braking. There's no nothing. This plane just goes bloop, right into the tower, and then explodes. And people seem to think that these towers were made of aluminum or something, or like butter, or who knows what, cheese whiz. I don't know. I've studied these towers. They're steel structures with reinforced concrete floors with spandrel plates on every floor. They're like a fortress, each one, and an aluminum plane. I'm sorry, there's just no friggin' way that it could penetrate the building. And you've even got the construction chief in 2001 saying that you could fly multiple airplanes into the towers. It wouldn't do anything to the towers. You'd have a pile of debris outside the tower. So what we saw on television wasn't real, and that's just it. We didn't see the planes. I didn't see the planes in real life. Neither did you. And those people that did say they saw the planes, you have to discredit because they could have been paid off. Remember, there was $2.3 trillion that went missing. They had the money to pay these people off to lie. And if you check out some of these witnesses, they mostly have Jewish last names like Feinstein, Goldstein, or I'm not I don't want to get into that, but it's pretty heavy that people know now that there's a lot of BS going on with Israel, with Zionism, and that ultimately there was like major theft going on that day, like the gold that was stolen, the securities that um, were they lacked security on them for that day, so that George H.W. Bush could have his war chest get through. It's something like $230 billion.
Oh yeah,
Um,
that you're talking about the things that matured on September 11th
right.
that didn't have to go through the normal procedure of verification if there wasn't this emergency going on.
They ransacked the place under
Mm.
the chaos. That's what it was all about. It was like it all came to a head. And notice how the day was like beautiful blue sky. I contend that they manufactured that too, but no, some people don't believe in the weather machine, but it's real. There's HARP, there's chemtrails, but I digress. All these things, they were handily executed with ease because what you have is an ignorant, unsuspecting public that trust their government, that believed everything that was fed to them afterward. 9/11 was blamed on Osama bin Laden that morning by a guy named Paul Bremer, who became the Iraq occupation governor, who happened to work in Tower 2 in one of the floors that got blown up. So he didn't go to work, but he managed to get on the news and tell the world that it was Osama bin Laden. And, it's problem, reaction, solution. There's no investigation being done. And you got,
Of course, you know who trained who was over there training Iraqi police during the Iraq occupation too, right?
oh God, yeah, the police chief from New York City.
Yeah, the guy who was police chief on that day.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
got thrown in jail on fraud charges or something like that.
much more recently. Yeah,
Yeah,
yes.
he was the one that was speaking for Giuliani. Giuliani was like a tool, sort of wandering through downtown New York when he should have been in a bunker or something. But it was all a photo op. It was all like, I'm the mayor of New York and I'm around the scene, and but he wasn't saying anything. It was all this police chief guy. And as a matter of fact, when they had their first press conference, the police chief, the, Giuliani was asked, was there any explosions involved? Even though it was widely understood that there were, even media that wasn't involved in this was reporting that there was explosion after explosion. The, 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 uh, the firemen were saying there was explosions. Like it goes on and on. But this guy's like, there were no explosions. It's all a bunch of lies and deception. And what sticks in people's minds is what they first hear, is the first impression, and then that becomes reality.
Yeah, well, that is what happens, and of course, on that day in that area, because as I've said many times on the show, I was in New Jersey at the time. So the local media is virtually the same as it is in New York City. We were hearing these reports as it was happening, and there were accounts of the plane with no windows. It looked like a commuter, one of these little commuter planes. These were the initial reports, is that it looked like one of those, which would be a wholly different animal from from a 747. Okay,
A
big.
767. That's the point.
Yeah.
They injected all these different ideas so that people would be confused.
Oh, and there was confusion because then, of course, there were other planes overhead not long
Right,
after.
right.
And this is rather curious. And of course, now I'm getting some Skype questions. Let me take a look at those real quick and see what they are. But this stuff was going on, and I know for a fact. You know. Okay. Well, yeah. The guy who I was talking about, it was the police chief in New York City. His name is Bernie Kirk.
Yeah,
That's who I was talking about because I
right.
was asked who that was, and okay. Uh,
I'm
okay.
gonna I'm gonna expose that guy in Biggest Lie 8. I'm exposing them, all the bad guys, the major players. These are all gonna come to the forefront and like slap right on your screen.
Yeah, and you kept adding to this because remember, okay, we did talk about the fact that you changed from going with the planes to going without the planes, right? But the thing is, there's a whole lot of things that kept getting added to this, and it kept evolving. So actually, you're on to the eighth movie in that series,
Mhm.
and this will be the last one, right?
Yeah, because I think I pretty much nailed it. The other movies, if you watch them all, I mean, you'll have a full understanding of what went on that day, according to me. I mean, but I include all kinds of testimony and video from other people, and it's based on truth, in that I include the other theories. Like, for example, I talk about the direct energy weapon theory could have been involved. I'm not saying it wasn't, but what I believe is it was explosions. It could have been in tandem with a mini nuke, or there's all kinds of possibilities. But from what I can tell you, I can see the detonation charges going off from Tower 2 on the east side and the north side of the tower as it's coming down. It's obvious.
Mm. Well, there is so much going on. It's been extremely hard to sort out, especially with the video evidence, right? And you don't think that Tower 7 is any sort of a big indicator of anything, or what?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll go jump right into that right now. 9/11 Truth and 89/11 Truth have been beating Tower 7 to death for the last, at least since 2006. Now, they proffer that nanothermite was used. It's sort of like Alex Jones saying, the government's evil, but then they misguide you. They make you focus on Tower 7. They don't talk about planes. They don't talk about collision dynamics. They don't talk about the structure of the steel in the towers, about the structure of an airplane. They don't get into the physics of it. Um, you have Richard Gage running around the country. He ran over all over Canada. He's in Europe right now. He's telling the same story he was telling people 9 years ago. Now, the problem with this is that, um, sure, it's revealing to people who don't know anything about it, but the story doesn't change. And the ultimate thing they say is, we want a new investigation. They've said that for 9 consecutive years. There has been no new investigation, and there won't be, because if there was, it would be like the bad guys shooting themselves in the foot. They would be, it's sort of like, I don't know. It's not realistic. It's not practical, and they know that.
Well,
I believe.
this has always been my question about the whole new investigation thing, because of course this was shouted about, for the Kennedy assassination, and we're now 50 years plus deep into
Right.
that quagmire.
Mm-hmm.
We want a new investigation, and in some cases we got one. But the thing is, what are you really asking for? What, for the government to admit what has happened here, to actually legitimately? I mean, do you actually want the people that you think are complicit in the crime to out themselves?
Yeah.
That's what you want. I've always questioned that. Is it going to be that you believe that they're going to say no, these were just rogue operatives that happen to have government connections? I mean,
More lies.
and what is it though? I mean, but I'm saying, if you're asking, that's like going to the mob and saying, listen, how many bodies you guys all together buried anyway? You're not going to get it. You might get a snitch here and there, but he's going to get discredited. They're going to try and put a bullet in him, and he's going to disappear into witness relocation. Plus, he's not ever going to tell his side of what he did all the way through anyway. He's not going to cop to every single one of his crimes, regardless of immunity. So what are you really asking for, except for what? Somebody to partially snitch on it? I mean, is that what you want? Or is it, which investigation do you want? An independent investigation, they often say. Well, what does that mean in your minds? I mean, what would be the declaration, and from whom would you want it,
Mm.
that would be satisfactory here? I would like the officials to cop to it. I really would, but do I realistically believe that's ever going to happen? No.
Right.
What do you think about that?
Well, I would say the American the country of America, the whole globe has been hijacked by the evil elites. This semblance of normality of countries with borders and governments and all. It's all a big matrix. It's all a big lie. This attack on the Trade Center was opening Pandora's box to elicit a series of events that unfolded one after the other, and I can cite some of them. You got Sandy Hoax, you got Boston Bombing, you got this, you got that. It all ends up at Jade Helm, where and this is going to knock some people off their ass. I think we're in big fucking trouble. I think Jade Helm is way worse than anybody even understands. There's been all this talk about culling the population and the Georgia Guidestones and the military takeover, martial law, blah 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 blah. It all goes on. I think this is about to actually come to pass, and the world as we know it is about to change forever. And it's all because 9/11 is the biggest goddamn fucking lie, and we didn't get it in time. And that's the problem. Is like I've been fighting every day for 2 years on this, and I give my all. I got some credibility, and people respect me. And when I say this is going to happen, I'm not talking out my ass. And I back up my shit with the facts and or with testimony or what have you. But 2.5 million people are dead since 9/11 as a consequence. And when it's just I worked that out to for every American that was killed on 9/11, 908 people are murdered. It's absolutely friggin' sick. And we're all disillusioned because you got the media, you got the government, and everybody who are covering their ass, and they're lying to us. They use this as a means to an end, and boy, I'm telling you, I think we're at the end.
Well, this is where again I'll have to diverge from you a little bit, and I'll tell you why. I think that Jade Helm is definitely not the ignition point because we've heard too much about it. This is one of those things that people have insisted that I wind up talking about, and I got to tell you, it doesn't seem like that's the end game. Is it furtherance of the end game? Yes. Is it normalizing this type of stuff? Yes. But intelligence operatives have been trained using the civilian population in America at least since the 1960s that I'm aware of. Now, the fact that we know the scope of this particular operation, the fact that these details came out is also highly suspect to me. Not only that, but when I see the likes of an Alex Jones screaming that this is the end game,
Yeah.
immediately, I don't know, maybe it's just my personal normalcy bias coming into play here, but as soon as I see that, I start to think that perhaps it's not,
Well,
because this is the same guy who, and I pointed this out before because I don't like to tune into his stuff very much because, I don't like anxiety. I
he's a
just don't.
liar. He's a
Well,
fucking Judas goat, lying sack of crap, and no one
there
should
you
trust
go.
him.
There you go. But hey, I'm just being the more mild mannered about this and telling you
Okay.
that, you're being blunt. I'm just saying that for me, when I look at what he does and what he says, I mean, there was one time I tuned into his show, and if you had no idea what was going on in the rest of the world and only relied on that stuff for your information, you would have thought that there was literally an invasion coming across the border from Mexico into Texas, right? I mean, like, red alert, it's coming down now. There are armed men. They're coming across the border, blah, 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 blah. And here it is. It's a Red Dawn scenario. It's happening now. And you guys got to get ready. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Right. Why did people like Bill Cooper get murdered and Alex Jones get to live? Alex Jones' wife is a Jew. Alex Jones has a mole on staff. He gets all his information from the government. He disseminates what needs to be heard so people are kept in check. And he also manipulates the information to, he'll give you a truth and then a lie. And anyway, he just put out this announcement today that the elites are making a run for it. Now, there's certain elements of this that are possibly true, but what he told us in that message, which I know is a lie, is that it'll be a war between Russia and the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And what I know is um, Russia, like Putin, Stephen Harper from Canada, Merkel, Tony Abbott, they're all New World Order fucking puppet stooges. And, the world is globalized, but we just don't understand that yet. But they have their claw over the world, but they haven't squeezed it yet. And
Well, right, and these guys are all players in the game, and that's not to say that there won't be a serious military conflict. I mean, right now we're watching them sort of jockey. Legitimately, what's happening is there's a conflict brewing between U.S. military forces and the Chinese.
right,
Okay, that's
but that's
happening.
all that's all bullshit because the Chinese are in on it too.
But see,
You got the
that's
Freemasons that are all over the world. You have the
yes.
Zionist faction that's all over the world. The Queen of England is a Zionist.
Mm,
The richest, most powerful people on the planet are Zionists. It's all crystal clear to me, in the sense that America declared independence from the royalty. That was a slap in their face. It's what, how many years ago? 250 years ago. Um, I believe that this evil grudge runs deep, and that it's coming to a head. They're going to get back at you because you said fuck you to the queen, and or the king or whoever at the time.
right. And that is part of the game as well. But look, it doesn't mean that military conflict is not going to happen because, after all, this is excellent revenue generation and ways to again cut down on the population, justify all sorts of concerns when it comes to the various military industrial complexes. Okay, not only ours is the biggest,
Yeah,
but the ones in other parts of the world also, they've got skin in the game. They've got to be sated. They have to be satisfied in one way or another. And this kind of thing is just going to have to happen. And the war on terror, although it is perpetual, is not the most efficient means by which, the people at Raytheon and the people at the Carlyle Group and the people at on and on and on,
yeah,
Dick Cheney's companies and so on and so forth, all these people, this is not the most efficient mechanism by which they're all going to get paid and continue to have their rotating fortunes, ever after replenished, right? So they're going to need something bigger. I still say, and I have been saying now for more than a year, that when we're really going to enter into the true World War III scenario is when you see Africa being a large theater beginning to open.
right.
And my suspicion still is that the war on terror will have to spread to there even more so. I mean, we've already seen it with these alleged Islamo-fascist groups that are rising up in different parts of Africa. We see that.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Libya being a player, people forget that is part of Africa. Okay? All of these things coming together, I think that's where they're going to open it up. And it's usually a surrogate warfare that really lights this stuff off. Like, the U.S. turns around and backs XYZ, whatever death squads we built, in the past decade that we don't yet know about. Okay. And then, of course, the former Soviet Union, now the Russian Federation, backs theirs. They get involved. Somebody else tries to get in between it. And next thing you know is you have the real domino effect where everything spreads like a virus.
Yeah, but it's all set up. It's all established. It's
Oh,
all
I'm not
preconceived.
saying that you. Oh, wait a minute. I didn't say that this was an organically occurring thing. This has all been planned out, and it always is.
Yeah, yeah,
It's always very predictable when you take a look at. We knew the Japanese were going to do what they did to allegedly be the catalyst for us to go into World War II. We knew that was going to happen. We knew that we were going to get pulled into World War One. That was a guarantee. That's why, of
that was a
course,
false flag.
yeah,
Um,
you got it. But that was a different one because that was a single assassination that brought us in World War One. That was supposed to be the big catalyst. And
the,
Bosnia is always a factor in these great world conflicts. This little tiny place, the former Yugoslavia always ends up being involved. Okay, I still haven't been able to sort of decode that one. Okay, but it is there, isn't it? Isn't that always the way it goes? Now,
It's all about training, learning from your mistakes. Uh, just like Boston bombing. They're training people to bust down people's doors and get on the floor. Like that kind of stuff. And also training people to accept this kind of George Orwellian situation where
we'll
you
see.
got to be scared.
And with the Boston bombing, it wasn't only a training exercise to get the public to understand how to submit to the searches and things like that, the no-knock warrants. It goes beyond that because even now, when they're talking about the radicalized Westerners, that's going to be pointed back to. And if you notice that guy they shot recently in New York, uh,
Okay.
who was the alleged terrorist, one of the big things was that he was looking up pressure cooker bombs too. Now that's meant to harken back to the Boston bombing,
Right.
isn't it? And again, because we have the embattled police state, we're going to have to arm them more, and we're going to have to give them sort of a little more legitimacy and kind of give them a little more slack regarding their behavior because they're under siege. So of course, the thing that went on in Dallas and all of that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's the furtherance of the agenda to make you understand that this is part of the new atmosphere. Whether you can actually lay your eyes on it and it's part of the real world or not is irrelevant. It's part of the great psy-opera. And I do love that phrase, although I got my issues with Ace Baker because let's not forget he's the guy who once faked his suicide on a show like this. Did you ever hear that story?
Yeah, I read about it not too long ago. I was looking up some of his work, and there's some merit in that, and there's some that's defeatist in a way. But I want to remind people how many sheep there are out there. The people that just are like, let's go shopping. I want McDonald's. They just don't have a clue. They're lost. They're in the dark. They got their heads in the clouds. I like to say their head up their ass. These people need to be woken up because if we don't, they're going to drag us down. The bad guys in all this, which we know who they are, our governments, the media, the police, the military, the Queen of England, the money makers, and so on, the Zionists and all of this shit. They're not stopping, and they're ramping up their efforts, and it's escalating at an exponential rate. We have to acclimate to that so we can be ready to either defend or be more powerful as a cohesive unit of people in the world that can say, no, you're not going to do it. We're together now, and we get it. And you're not gonna do what you're gonna do, even if you have superior firepower. Where there's way more of us.
Well, that is the trouble. You kind of dove out there sound wise, but this is the trouble. Because regardless of the fact that we actually outnumber them, the technological advantage is there on their side, okay, and so on and so forth. What I'm constantly wondering, though, is exactly what type of slap in the face it's going to take to get people to understand that they've been lied to. And not only, again, by the ideas of the mainstream and by the more acceptable ways of looking at things, but the truth is that you're being lied to all over the place. They have already placed people in positions of power regarding speaking to those of us on the fringe, okay, without regard for the truth. They've already done it so that if you have a suspicious mind, there are plenty of people that'll speak to your suspicious mind and lead you down the wrong path. Judas Goat is definitely a good description for a lot of these guys.
Okay.
And wrong or right, I don't mind which path I have to go down, and I'll admit to my mistakes when I make them. It's not a problem. But I'm definitely not one of these paid-for provocateurs out there who is misleading anybody who wants to actually legitimately question the situation.
Okay.
Now, you're not one of those guys either, and I can agree with you, disagree with you. We can discuss this. We can go over the particulars. But at the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
the reality is that you've been lied to, and you haven't been lied to by one person. You haven't been lied to by one faction. You haven't been lied to by one set of entities. You've been lied to all the way around.
Yeah.
And you need to be able to open your own damn eyes. And I'm not talking to you, James,
No.
okay? But I'm just saying, you need to open your own damn eyes and do some of your own damn thinking. Because if you don't, then all you're doing is volunteering for the suicide that you're committing, okay? And
If you're not part
trust
of
me,
the solution, you're part of the problem. And I want to say there's a saying: you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Sort of like you can lead a person to consciousness, but you can't make them think. But if you keep them there for a little while, they'll get thirsty and they will drink. And there's always more than just the framed point of view. The two options that are both wrong. People you're right. People need to figure this out for themselves, and that's we're waiting on those people to open their minds and open their eyes and get on board this train to freedom, real freedom. I mean, because what's happening is every moment that ticks by, darkness is creeping in, and it'll either swallow us up or we'll come out on top. It's one or the other, but only time will tell. But if we do nothing to try to bring people to awareness, just by talking about stuff, shunning people that only give a shit about themselves and don't, you know, uh, bad behavior in terms of like selfishness and try to talk about thinking about the world because it's a global village. It's a rock that we all live on. We're all here together. These borders and stuff are illusions. And I mean, I can talk to someone in New Zealand or in China or in Germany or whatever through the internet, and well, it's ideal to expand your horizons. And to those people who say they don't pay attention to what's going on because it scares them, well, it's going to be a much scarier place if you just let it ride. You got to face this thing.
well, absolutely. And the thing is, globalism by itself is not a bad idea if we're talking about trying to coexist, if we're talking about cooperation as opposed to confrontation, if
Yeah.
we're talking about, actually collectively getting together and understanding that we are all part of the same element in the equation. Okay, that's what it is. The ideas of borders, the subdivision of race, the subdivision of whatever orientation, regardless of what it is, all of this stuff, these are all put upon you, okay, in order so that you'll keep fighting with yourselves so that you don't ever turn against your slave masters. That's what the bottom line is. And hey, 9/11 is the acceleration point. It is the point at which we were all kind of sucked into this, and I've admitted it several times. For a long time, I was willing to go along with that story, no matter how it didn't sit with me correctly. Okay? But ever after, what have we seen? The reduction in our freedoms, the reduction in the reality that was, sort of being allowed to live and let live in this country and across the planet. We have an invasion of Iraq, which has still never been adequately justified. We have plenty of individuals who are just human beings after all, who happen to occupy a different section of this planet than we do, that are dying daily. And what for? For a giant illusion, for a giant fabrication that is the war on terror, allegedly. Okay, or should I say the war on alleged terror? I'm not sure how that actually goes, but either way, at the end of it all, it's just a fiction. And 9/11 is our modern, is our modern ignition point. It's the modern point of ignition for this reality that we currently find ourselves in. And unless we start opening our eyes and understanding that, I think, whatever is going to come is, it may not be tomorrow. It may not be at the very end of Jade Helm, okay, but it's being done incrementally. It's being done in slow motion, almost so that most of those that are unaware and sort of already walking around in a numbed out state aren't even going to realize exactly how tight their shackles really are now. they're not going to realize that there's no more air to breathe and that there's no more planet to live on. Well, until they're just about closing their eyes, and then it'll be too late.
Right.
And how else can you put it? And I'm sorry I get off on these little weird tangents. I mean, who knows?
It's
Maybe I get
useful.
through to somebody, but
It's useful. If you talk it out, and people should be having these discussions. And like, it's it may sound morbid, but like that's the reality, man. That's let me list off a few things. Georgia Guidestones. The first thing on the Georgia Guidestone states maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. All right, so it's in stone. These things have been put there by the elites. They've been there for 30 years or so. They have this plan to depopulate the world, and they're not like. What are the chances you're going to be picked? If you're not part of the bloodlines, then you risk a very low chance of survival. And if you were to survive, you'd probably be their slave. So this is the reality of that. There are things you can do to curb their efforts to make you a zombie. Stop drinking fluoridated water. You can boil your water and take the fluoride out. Prescription drugs. Don't watch TV. Don't watch any fucking TV. No news, no cartoons, nothing. It's all, they have some pre-predicted programming in there. Everything's by design to inject ideas in your head. There's a whole host of things that you can do, like be prepared. I don't know, congregate with your friends and family and talk about this in a realistic manner, because if you hammer it enough, eventually it'll crack. And I'm saying, like, after 2 years of having to put up with like constant belligerence from family and friends, they're sheep, like most people. I've been working at this, like, this is my job, and they, I don't go to their job and say, you're doing your job wrong. They know what they're doing, so this is my job, and I know what I'm doing, and they're telling me I'm doing my job wrong. Well, I have news for them, and after 2 years, they're starting to crack, and so there is hope. You just got to keep chipping away at the old block.
yeah, definitely. And of course, being confronted by that stuff constantly. I mean, look, you're gonna have to expect it. And I'm guilty of watching cartoons, by the way, but because that's like my vent. That's like my steam vent, man. I enjoy that stuff. I see the multiple levels of predictive programming in them, though, and I see the everything from South Park doing their. Did you ever see South Park's 9/11 Truth episode?
No.
I mean, kind of funny, but at the same time, I'll give you a brief synopsis, and you'll probably appreciate this, because to me, at the end of the day, unintentionally, they created a really good kind of psychological loop. It starts out that that somebody took a dump in a urinal at school, so they're trying to investigate to find out about what happened. And one of the guys who's really ignorant and is always like trying to start Nazi movements and cults and things like that, he turns around and he says, well, it's all got to do with the fact that the Jewish character in the school is directly behind 9/11. Okay, now you're saying to yourself, this is kind of strange, Chuck. What do you mean by this? Well, wait, it gets weirder. They go out on a quest to go find out what's actually going on with 9/11. They run into one of those guys with a blatantly like investigate 9/11 black T-shirt on, and he's running the websites and all that stuff. And the government drags him into the White House, and George W. Bush is there, and because at the time he was president still, is there, and it turns out that the government is actually behind all of the 9/11 Truth websites. And they want to make sure that people believe that they were behind 9/11 so that they could maintain the illusion of power. Okay. Now, all of that going on, and at the end of it, The conclusion is, well, then who is actually behind 9/11? Well, a bunch of pissed off Muslims. Why? What are you, retarded? Okay, and that was like the end of it. Now, not the message that I would have been most happy with, but the fact that they actually wind up playing out a whole bunch of these weird scenarios, I think was actually kind of useful because,
It gets your mind going. You work at it. Like
well, yeah, because look, to consider the idea that the government might be behind some of the 9/11 theories that are out there, or that individuals that are looking to make sure that we stay off the actual track is legitimate. Okay, to imagine that and also the profound statement that the government likes to maintain the illusion of power as opposed to actually having sway over a lot of things. Guess what? That's actually part of the reality as well. So, depending on how you look at that whole episode,
well,
you know what I mean. If you go with the whole master conclusion of it, of course you're retarded if you believe anything other than a bunch of pissed off Muslims with box cutters pulled off 9/11, which I contend is precisely the inverse of reality. If you can imagine that somebody with a box cutter took over an airplane and everything else, I don't know what to tell you, but
mm,
like during the, I did an interview with Rebecca Roth, and she was talking about one of the people that she found out was present on one of the planes actually turns out to be like a Mossad special tactics, like almost like the Mossad Green Beret kind of dude who like is one of these people that'll like kill you with a swizzle stick kind of guys.
okay.
And it's like it's completely wholly unbelievable that this guy wouldn't have been able to stop a couple of morons with a box cutter if he wanted to. Okay, so
I think most people would not want to subject themselves to extreme danger. Like I give credit to Americans to stand up to some asshole with a box cutter. Maybe they'll lose their lives, but at least everybody won't die. In this illusory scenario, um, what I'm saying is that I think the people would have stood up and they would have tackled these motherfuckers, and they wouldn't take that shit because they don't have a gun, for Christ's sake.
mm, there you go. And what would have been the great weapon, unless unless there's more to it, and so on and so forth, and and that does lead us to an interesting thing. Like, what do you think actually happened to the planes, or do you think they didn't exist at all? I wonder, James.
They're complete bullshit, completely manufactured, fabricated bullshit.
Mm,
The FAA's in it, all the government, everybody's in it, and you have the standard retort, which is like the government's too stupid to be able to pull that off. Well, it's not the government, for Christ's sake. Get that through your head. It's these elite assholes who are masterminds who made these plans years and years and years ago. I contend that the towers were built by Rockefeller for the express purpose of being destroyed.
mm,
I mean, there's all kinds of symbolism in the towers, eh? There's the tridents, so that's the devil symbol. Maybe you could go, okay, well, Neptune. Um, there's the 33 benches around the gold blob in the middle. There's the two towers are separated into three sections, so if you put three next to three, you got 33. Um, there's actually a movie I haven't watched it that I want to, which talks about all of the Illuminati numerology with relation to 9/11, because for sure, like numbers like 77 and 11, and even the numbers in Tower 1, it was 1366 dead, and in Tower 2 is 600 dead, so you got 666. There's everyone I know that's a sheep is so quick to judge. They'll be like, well, that's just coincidence. And I'm like, no, there's no coincidences. Everything is connected and it's done for a reason. I personally think that the number of reported deaths in Tower 2 is incorrect.
mm. But what about the fact that that people had to have collected on life insurance policies and stuff like that, for the people on the planes? I mean,
That can be completely manufactured stuff too. I have a friend who believes because the seismic activity was not consistent with the for building 7. I was like, well, don't you think they could fake that too? I mean, like, honestly, the way I look at it is these guys are so fucking smart and they're so thorough that they would cover every aspect of 9/11, including the dissenters. And they wouldn't miss a beat. They would cover all of it. They wouldn't leave anything open to chance. Even if people disagreed and whatever, they had. That's what 9/11 truth is. It was, in my opinion, it's an opinion. I don't have any facts except for something I'll tell you in a minute. Um, that they were put there long before it happened to accommodate all the people that would dissent. And by way of being what they have accrued or accumulated a list of everybody who's a dissenter.
Mm. Well, that's for sure, and I think that is a great part of what Jade Helm leads into, because anybody who is a dissenter is now, because we know they're able to monitor everybody, but now they can very easily watch the reaction, exactly how you're taking to this announcement and this wave of information that's in the alleged alternative media stream, right? And they can see exactly where it would go if something that's a realistic scenario was introduced. I really do feel like this is a large test on multiple levels, and they're getting their money's worth. I really feel like that.
Um, yeah, and um, I'm not telling people to be scared. I'm saying be realistic. Um, you've been had on many fronts, not just 9/11, like all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'll get into I watched Loose Strange 3, and I got to the part where they show the 3D animation of the airplane hitting Tower 2. And I was stunned because there's massive, massive problem with it. They depict the tower having a core alignment of east-west when it should be north-south. And that is a massive lie. They are trying to insinuate that the plane mashed through the core columns, which isn't the case. If you look at the actual footage, be it doctored or not, the plane hits right of center on an angle and
Mm-hmm.
goes for a beeline through the wide part of the floor. If anything hits the core, it's like the left side of the fuselage or what have you, but and the wing and the engine would go in the core, but not the whole plane. And beside the fact that um, the wings, like I already said, this the wings, the tail section should all have broken off. They wouldn't just slice through 2.5 inch thick tube steel in an array with 1 inch thick spandrel plates with 4 inch layer of concrete for each floor. I mean, it's ridiculous. And one more thing, 9/11 Commission reported that the plane was going at 600 miles per hour, which is not possible. The airplane, according to John Lear, who flies airplanes, is the son of the guy who made the Lear jet.
Mm-hmm.
He flew at sea level a 767 to test out how fast they could go. They can only reach a maximum speed of 415 miles per hour before the thing will disintegrate in an air. And so 600 miles per hour, first of all, coming out of a dive and then leveling out and nailing the tower is absolutely preposterous.
Mm. Yeah, it's an aerodynamic difficulty, but what is the real significance, though, of whether it's north to south or east to west, the alignment of the core columns? I mean, what do you think is the significance really? I mean, what is the key point about that? Because couldn't it have done the same amount of damage and all that, regardless of the alignment, or
Well, you've heard the saying, jet fuel doesn't melt steel beams.
right?
The whole explosion that we see is a massive pyrotechnics display. But besides that, to get to your point, um, if you look at a top-down view, okay, imagine a box,
Mm-hmm.
and in the box is a rectangle that's going left to right. The airplane's coming in from the left, and the fuselage of the airplane skims the bottom left corner. It doesn't go through the the columns. See, what I'm saying is the towers looked identical on the outside, but the insides were different.
Hmm.
The cores were and these cores were made up of comprised of 47 5.5 inch thick steel box columns with 6 and 3/8 inch steel center beams. Basically, speaking to the fact that they're like bloody thick steel,
Right.
went in an array. So you got cross beams on each floor, and it's all like a lattice or an array of steel that goes from the base of the tower, the bedrock, to the hat truss, which is the top of the tower. So it's in a rectangle. Um, Now, what I'm saying is, loose change depicted this rectangle being in the way of the plane.
Hmm.
What in actual fact happened was it wasn't. The plane missed the core, and if it hit the core, it only hit the corner of it, and like that's not enough for the whole fucking building top to come down.
Yeah, that is bizarre, and not only that, but I mean, even the outward face of the building, the steel that is aligned there is pretty remarkable too. And I've always had difficulty trying to reason, even at the speed they claimed the plane was traveling, how it would have completely traversed that whole frontal area of steel. You know that piece that we saw ever after, which became iconic
Mm-hmm.
of those. I don't know what you call them. They're like H's that are put together, right?
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about.
Are you talking about I beams?
No, no, it's sort of like a flat like skin of these puzzle pieces that are put together almost like a bunch of H's, right?
Yeah,
That
the cladding. Are you talking about the
yeah,
aluminum cladding? Okay.
yeah. I mean, it seems to me bizarre that it could have even gotten through that.
Yeah, well, and remember these airplanes. In physics 911, I had an engineer work with me on this, and we put in a whole thing on airplane wings. It's how it's made or some stupid show like that, but it basically illustrates that airplane wings are very strong for lift. But if you're hitting an airplane with a goose or something, a bird, whatever, it's gonna go right through the friggin' wing. It's made of aluminum. There's nothing inside it. Now there's fuel inside it, but fuel is not. Um, you can account for momentum, but it doesn't account for structure.
Hmm.
And it's the whole thing is ridiculous. There were no planes. It's got to dawn on you, man. It's got to make sense to you. I don't know what else I have to tell you.
Like, look, you moved me from not considering it at all
Yeah.
to considering it.
Okay.
Okay, I'm not an easy person to convince. You understand, because and the nature of eyewitnesses, the nature of fakery, and everything else. And even if one assumes that all of the video footage is completely fabricated, it still doesn't directly say to me
Mhm.
that there was no planes. See, that's the thing, is that even if you can prove to me that it was faked to be that way, it doesn't necessarily mean that that isn't what happened. It just means that we can't see the actual details of what happened. So again, it's a hard thing to convince me of,
Well,
but
let me offer this. It's good for me to have this argument with somebody who's a smart guy and who is able to take things in stride and um, to be able to look at it and say, okay, well, this is what I don't understand, so explain it. And so I explain it to the best of my ability. And if you still don't get it, well, there's something wrong with what I'm saying that I need to work on. But I think that it's just a matter of getting over that hurdle. Or what I also like to tell people is there's scenario A, B, and C. It's one of these scenarios. Whichever one, it doesn't matter. Um, they all point to it's all a big fat lie, and everything that's come out of it is like evil shit, and we're in big trouble.
well, and there is where we again join forces, because regardless of whether you're correct about there being no planes or there being planes, or whether it was exactly headed by XYZ Corporation and it was these particular people or whatever else. The one thing that you and I would agree on without any sort of argument is that it is a huge lie that has done nothing but been detrimental to the planet. Okay? Ever after. All right. And it's not just the people in New York City. It's not just America. It's not just the Middle East. But think about the resounding results that have ever after echoed across the globe. Okay? This
Right.
has been nothing but a poison pill that we were all forced to swallow. The official account is nonsense without any sort of qualification. It's nonsense. Okay, we can pick it apart 80 different ways.
Yeah.
Okay, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because we were all lied to. We were all lied to push forward this agenda, which has been nothing but toxic.
All
Okay,
right.
and you can't argue with a single thing I just said there. I'm
No, no,
sure.
no, not at all. But what I do want to get to is like there is no need for a new investigation. The court of public opinion has determined that it is a lie, and that this is a massive lie that has had a domino effect, which is basically created a militarized police state, which is on the verge of annihilating us at some point. And the point is that there's treason, there's deceit, there's sedition, there's massive illegal activity, there's theft, there's murder. You know, people have to stand up and actually grab this bitch by the horns and like, you know, take control of it because the longer it it grows, it gets stronger every day.
And the criminality is absolutely obvious throughout. Okay, not just the murders of around 3,000 people that day, not just the traumatizing of entire populations, not just the illegal and illicit, ridiculous war that we have been ever after entangled in, but all of it put together. And on top of it, the police state being bolstered, being required, the snitch society, the say something, see something, the come on. How much further does it have to go? Right? I mean,
Makes you just want to stop being American and just go live in Costa Rica or something and read books for the rest of your life.
I'm about there. I'm about there. I'll tell you, if I could afford to leave, or if I thought they would issue me a passport, I'd be gone. It's that simple. If I could get those two things together, I would get it. But I'm not allowed to have a passport. Anyway,
Listen, I want to
another
tell you.
story.
I
Yeah.
want to tell you something. I don't normally watch these videos, but there's a lot of ISIS videos coming out. I make friends with a lot of people around the world, so I get different stuff. And you know, these ISIS guys are fucking evil. Now, first of all, I want to say that ISIS is formed by the CIA, by Mossad, Israel, by Qatar, by Saudi Arabia. It's the Wahhabis. It's these bastards that have the cover of the evil elite saying they're something that they're not, and they're going into Iraq and they're just mass murdering people. It's
Hmm.
absolutely abhorrent. They tape the shit. They show people getting their heads chopped off. They show it's like unbelievable. And my heart goes out to these people and to the people in Gaza. Like, how can the world stand by and let this happen? It's absolutely shameless.
Hmm. No,
Shameful.
that's shameful. Shameful. Yeah, exactly. And this is part of the new reality, right?
Right.
This is part of the equation. And this is what it's about. We weren't satisfied and could no longer drag around the weekend at Bernie's like corpse of Osama bin Laden, right? That was no good anymore. So they had to, clear away that particular table they set in 2012 and finally get rid of, you know, the ghost of terrorism past. All right. They had to get rid of him finally. And of course, bolster the street cred of Barry. all right, by doing so. But see, ISIS comes right onto the scene, and of course, again, another group of individuals who obviously lead right back to the intelligence community, who, even though there are legitimately pissed off, crazy, radicalized individuals across the planet who really do look at the United States as the great Satan, as they used to say, they're only utilizing them as opportunists because the people who are really running the show aren't them. They're being run, and they're rather convenient, that's for sure. And the other part of that is at this point in time, for people across the planet to see the United States as an evil entity in the world,
It's
I'm not
just
shocked. It's
yeah.
justified. Exactly. It's completely justified because after all, what have we done but support the criminal state of Israel? What have we done but gone into various foreign lands, torture, rendition, absolutely decimate local populations, turn around and drone strike people. These are all parts of the reality.
Hmm.
And for those people to be pissed off at us and legitimately, I have nothing to say to them except, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
So you take that and then you create the perfect storm with all of this manipulation and the fact that, again, our intelligence agencies and military contracting agent provocateur people are sitting there and backing these guys, funding them, giving them logistical support, turning around and giving them intelligence and everything else. I'm not surprised we're in the state we're in. I'm not surprised that we never really left Iraq. I'm not surprised that Afghanistan is now a larger and longer conflict than Vietnam was. I'm not surprised that, well, of course, there's the commensurate need to make sure that those who make their living out of the importation and exploitation of drugs on the streets of America, you got to keep them fueled too,
Right.
because you can't do it the Iran Contra way anymore. That got a little too messy. And of course, that body count's never been accurately ever quantified in Central and South America for the sake of the cocaine. And lo and behold, we have another heroin epidemic still on the streets of America that nobody really wants to talk about,
Yes, sir.
unless you want to do a reality show about rehabs and celebrities who are getting too smacked out to understand what the hell's going on. Okay, fine. So of course that's all part of the equation, isn't it? And meanwhile, who's actually benefiting from all of this? It's not you. It's not me. It's not the general public. It's definitely not the soldiers who are going over there under the guise of serving their country. It's definitely none of those people. And what do we finally end up with is that we've all been lied to. It is all for the sake of this revenue generating control mechanism that just seems endless, just as endless as the war on terror is going to be unless we do something about it.
I
I
think
mean, again, I'm sorry, but again, argue with me, please. Tell me I'm insane, James.
you're a fucking whack job, buddy.
Thank
No,
you.
just kidding. I think you nailed it, and I wanted to say there's a lot of other things we can talk about that are part of this major problem of ours. Basically, what's going on is the rape of the world, and these. I've sort of tried to rationalize how the fuck can these people at the top, these elites, want to see the world destroyed. Is it because they're evil? Is it because they just want to take all the resources for themselves? I believe that Fukushima was no accident.
Mm,
They could have nuked the bottom of the ocean and caused that tsunami. They're flying shit over. They're poisoning us like roaches with these with these chemtrails. I mean, I talked to a friend last night, and he's like, "Chemtrails aren't real." I'm like, "You're an idiot," like. So regardless of the fact that lots of people don't get it, a lot of people do get it, and I think that when there's enough like a critical mass of people that get it, um, the sheep will follow along. They'll follow the herd because that's what they're good at. Um,
mm,
and but I want to talk about the Federal Reserve, how money is created from thin air, and that interest is applied to this thin air money, and it's not backed by anything, and it's in circulation, and you end up owing. You end up owing money on the debt that doesn't exist, and blah blah blah. See, a dollar is a claim on wealth.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be a real claim on wealth, backed by gold, but it is a fiat currency. It's all over the world, and they play with that at will. It has nothing to do with any real thing. It's all just like one day they decide to be assholes and they increase inflation, or this or that or the other thing. It's all these things that we accept as normal economic things that are predictable and blah blah blah, which are reported by the news and so
Yeah,
on.
one of the most influential and prolific instruments of manipulation and control on the planet, which is absolutely unquestioned by people who have faith in it.
Right.
That is exactly what goes on regarding the monetary system. And I got to tell you, although I do disagree with a great deal of what goes on during the Zeitgeist movies,
Okay.
if you simply extract their whole explanation of fractional reserve banking and the Federal Reserve, it's about like 15 minutes. If you just watch that portion of, I forget which Zeitgeist it is, it might be the third one.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure which one. It might be moving forward, whatever. I can't remember. They all sort of blend together in my head. I know the first one was very much concerned with the, you know,
Jesus and Horace.
with Jesus and Horus, and and how this is very much the the continual plagiarized sort of spiritual figure on and on in history, which is real information and good. Another good part of that movie series, but the thing is, there's a lot of bad parts in there too that I just can't wrap my intellectual beak around. Okay.
Okay.
But the thing is, their explanation of the Federal Reserve and how it actually works and how you need to look at money and how they explain it
Mm-hmm.
is probably about as perfect as it's going to get.
Yeah.
And James Corbett did a good one too, called Century of Enslavement,
Okay.
which is another good explanation, but with a little bit of humor, because he actually uses some of the cartoon movies from the Federal Reserve itself to make his points, which are pretty. That's just hysterical. Um, so definitely, if you're listening and you're thinking about the Federal Reserve thing, and you want to like a really solid breakdown on it, I would suggest those two things. But the fact that this is the completely unquestionable participation that anybody who's listening to me who's in the United States of America, if you're not you're participating in the monetary system, you absolutely are.
Mm-hmm.
There's no two ways about it. You have internet, you exist, you have to be participating in the monetary system. Okay, and believe it or not, by doing so, you're feeding the beast. Now, do I have the solution for how to extract people from it? I don't, to be honest with you, because Bitcoin ain't it.
No,
Okay.
I got something for you.
Yeah, go
Um,
ahead.
Now, there's this general idea like they say we got to depopulate the planet. There's not enough food. Well, that's a lot of bullshit. There's plenty of food. Okay, there's enough. There's abundance for everybody on Earth. I don't care how many people there are, like 20 billion, 20, whatever. The point is, there's not enough money. They and the people that have the money are hoarders, and they keep it all for themselves because they're greedy. This whole idea about greed has been instilled in us, and it's definitely prominent in the United States. You know, they're denying people that are homeless food from charitable organizations in the states right now. It's like
Mm-hmm.
it's frowned upon. Don't feed the homeless. Anyway, now the point is, I want to get at is this: just think about it. Don't start doing it yet, but it's an idea. Okay, if you were to change the currency to seeds or beans or things you could eat, then you could grow your money and you could feed the world. But the more you grow, the richer you are. And this goes along with that's the idea. This goes along with people should be growing gardens and getting their own food from their own gardens.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing, what was it? I don't know. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, to be honest with you, there's another aspect to this that I think needs to be hit home, and that is this: even if there weren't hoarders, okay, with the money, and we didn't have people aggregating their wealth on a global scale, we'd still all be broke. Because here's the problem: the concept of interest in and of itself is completely self-defeating. Over time, there is never enough money in existence
Right.
to pay the debt anyway. And we're starting to see that as the debt mounts, in this country, in every country seemingly on the planet. Every single country on the planet is broke. Where's the riches? Well, I guess we have to finally come to a conclusion that there aren't any really,
It's all
because,
illusory. It's all crap from China.
yeah.
Your house will fall apart if you use because it's made of crap.
Hmm.
They don't make things like they used to. I wanted to bring up barter and trade. People should start doing that like in a very serious manner. You know, you fix the plumbing in my house, and I'll do your roof. This, that, or the other thing. Um, don't make it a one-time deal. Make it like every month. Try to do something big like that, because that not only brings communities together, but it also um, you know it's a way out of the money system. And if you get used to doing it, you'll be more acclimated to it when the time comes where there is no money.
Well, see, that's the thing, is that's the real preparation. Is if people started to come around to the concept of making real exchanges with one another, not only in a value for value sense directly like that, but just in general. The fact that people don't talk to each other, the fact that they live in a surrogate reality, the fact that they're more concerned with what's going on their iPhone than they are with what's going on next door to their home. The fact that they don't know their neighbors, but they know the names of the trolls on the website where they like to go to discuss their favorite freaking pop singer. Okay, this kind of stuff is exactly what's counterproductive. The people are not actually engaging in reality. The most antisocial thing in the world is social media, apparently. You know, there you go with the doublethink.
Yeah,
And isn't that exactly what it's designed to do? Is make sure that we're all completely segregated into as small a pockets as possible to keep us all at each other's throats, apparently fighting for our alleged tribes, which are all an illusion anyway. Because the reality is, people are part of one particular tribe. We are the living entity on this particular planet, regardless of whether you want to think it's flat or round or whatever. Fact is, we're all here, okay? And unless you think that me and everyone else is just a voice and a vision in your own imagination, and you are the only entity in all of creation, unless you actually believe that, then maybe it would be good to reassess your disconnected nature in the world at large. And I'm just a crazy conspiracy theorist, James. So what do I
fuck.
know?
You know what? So am I. I think anyone who's a real human being is a conspiracy theorist because you know what? There's a conspiracy, and it's about trying to kill us all, and that's not too far from the real deal. I mean, they're killing us with fluoride in the water, with GMO foods, with Fukushima radiation, with fracking, with vaccines, with oh, how can you forget chemtrails with their barium and strontium 90 and their aluminum oxide? They're fucking us all up the ass. When will you people wake up and fucking do something about it?
Yeah.
I'm talking to people in general.
Oh, I know, I know. I mean, how much more do you have to be medicated into a stupor? How much longer do you have to be fed food that's not food? How much longer do you have to drink water that's toxic? How much longer do you have to breathe air that is absolutely corrosive to your entire system? How much longer do you have to allow your psychology to be invaded by the mind control? How much longer does that have to happen before an internal rebellion begins to rise up in you and you become a conspiracy theorist like me?
Snap! You lose it. Yeah, well, you know,
Yeah.
it can come on like a sort of like a wow, I just figured it out, or it can be like an epiphany, like holy shit, all the fucking pieces are falling into place, or you could just be like, oh, I want McDonald's, man. That's all I care about.
Well, you know that, and whoever the winner of the next American Idol is, so that you can make sure that you pre-order your tickets, and by all means, make sure that you buy every single thing from the Apple Store because you don't ever want to have your door kicked in for illegally downloading something or whatever else. Because after all, cybercrime is the wave of the future. So, you know, that's about how you wrap it up. And I'll tell you something. We're actually down to the last 15, well, less than 15 minutes now. And interesting conversation, I would say, we had tonight, James, don't you?
Yeah, it was good. I like that.
I definitely like doing this. And again, I ask the listener to consider every single possibility. Take a look at the world around you at the very least. Start by doing that and stop staring down at your devices and only believing that you're the only entity on this planet. You may wish to seek to socialize because after all, socialization is one of those things that comes completely natural to the human species. It really is. It's one of those things that you require over time. If you don't, there's certain parts of your brain that don't function as well, and everything else. And honestly, you'll live longer. Okay, if you socialize with your fellow human being, even though I'm not saying don't be selective. You know, choose your socialization carefully and try and choose the information that you receive carefully, and try and choose the food you eat carefully, and try and choose the water you eat carefully. Do your best not to give in to those that wish to destroy us on every single level, at every single turn, and on every single side of the panopticon that is the reality we find ourselves in.
True.
So, James, I'm going to give you the last couple of minutes here. And once again, people, if you haven't seen James's work, take a look at it. 9/11, The Biggest Lie. Of course, there's a series of movies that go along with it, but that was the big one. That was the first one. Plus all the broadcasts and everything else. And tell people where they can find everything.
All right. Well, if you go to YouTube and look up James Easton, I think it'll probably come up right away. Um, of course, you can type 9/11, the biggest lie. That'll come up. But I have a channel, and in the channel is all the movies in the playlist. Plus, there's all my latest uploads. And I've done a lot of silly shit. I'm a bit of a joker sometimes, and I talk about all of it. 9/11 is a mountain of crap, and just like it's important to take a shovel scoop and examine what's in it, and so I cover every aspect of it. I'm not asking you to watch all 700 episodes over 2 years, but the majority of the really good stuff is in the movies, and everything after the second movie is all no planes. So have that in your mind, if you accept it or not. But have a listen to it, because in the movie Physics 9/11, we really nailed it. I mean, we covered it from every angle, and I have an engineer who's got 25 years experience, and he works with physics every day. So
I
he's
always
not
forget that guy's name, by the way. What's his name again?
Steve Gage, and I always confuse his name with Richard Gage, and I sometimes screw it up. But anyway, I wanted to say in closing, there's three types of communication. There's pastime, which is you're standing at the bus stop, and you're waiting for the bus, and there's a thunderstorm coming, and you say the next day, oh, it looks like a thunderstorm's coming. That's pastime communication.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's intimacy, which is, well, you all know what that is. and then everything else is the game. And the game is what we're living in, and it's a big fucking stupid game run by the elites, and they cheat, and we have to play by the rules. Now, you got to think hard about how you can beat the game and get out of it. Eventually, one day we'll all get out of this game, and we'll live like real human beings.
Mm. And that is the point. And though I don't really feel like playing the game, it is the circumstance I find myself in, and so do all of you who are hearing what we're talking about tonight. This is the reality: is that the rest of it is all being manipulated. There is intimacy, which we all know. Well, everybody has their own level of exactly how much they can trust people on an intimate level. There is pastime, like you said. This is a really good way to actually put it all together. And the rest of it being the big game. See, I think of it as the big game because I look at it on a very large scale and think about the context of every single entry into the game, every single one of the pieces that's been thrown on the crazy board, you know. And it's definitely one of those things that everybody should take a step back once in a while and consider, is that a whole lot of the information, a whole lot of what you've been taught to take for granted, a whole lot of what has been considered to be the lexicon of acceptable terminology, a whole lot of what has been given to you as conventional wisdom is actually a big lie. And of course, 9/11 in our modern time here was the biggest lie, which of course is the name of your movie.
Right.
And this was the catalyst for so much absolute misery, which has been spread ever after across the entire planet. So that's all I've got to say about that. But I do want to thank you, James, especially for stepping in my moment of confusion, trying to figure out what to do with Mr. Springmeyer and whether he was going to show up. So,
My pleasure. I really like talking to you, Chuck.
and it's always enjoyable. So I would do a lot more shows with you, but I don't want to get people screaming at me that all I do is talk to you. So otherwise, I would do more with you, and I do promise that we're gonna wind up doing more with you in the future. That's for sure. So if you guys like this, then stay tuned. You'll definitely hear from James again, regardless of whether I agree with him or disagree with him or whatever else. We're two human beings having a discussion, and you know what? Even the little bit of conflict that we might have regarding our viewpoints is something to consider and is definitely part of the discussion and is one of those things that you have to do in order to come to those correct conclusions. Okay, so once more, again, with I don't know, 6 minutes left, I want to thank everybody who did decide to tune in and give us this time tonight. Here on the Ochelli Effect, which I do always forget to mention the name of my show. And you can find my stuff if you're hearing this further on down the line. You can find the archive, the YouTube playlist for UCY.tv, the Ochelli Effect playlist, if you just go to UCY.tv. And my particular section is at UCY.tv/TOE. And there is, I don't know, 50 different hosts over there, all sorts of different points of view. And that's the way that is. Most of them I'm not familiar with, so don't ask me about them. But but they are there, and some of them I like. Okay. Now, James, again, it is always great to hear from a Canadian, and as somebody who, and yes, I threw that in there just to be funny, because it's funny, Canadians often seem to have some of the greatest points of view regarding this stuff, because although you're kind of thought of in a lot of cases as just like the natural extension of the United States, decidedly from a psychological standpoint, you guys are not. You're definitely different. We have a kinship,
Yes.
Canadians and the U.S. population, but you guys are definitely different. And I don't know, sometimes I feel like I probably should be more of a Canadian than an American, because I get along so much better with you guys than I do half the people on this side of the border, seems like. So,
I'll tell you what, though. I think America's like the older brother and Canada's like the younger brother, but we sure do get along pretty well. And I love my American brothers, and I don't buy the stereotypes at all. So I'm pleased with the last 2 years of dealing with a lot of Americans for sure.
Yeah, and I'm sure you have. And also, you know what? You can find James on Facebook and stuff like that.
Okay.
Sometimes you come and go on Facebook,
Yeah,
but
9/11 the biggest lie on Facebook. Sorry about that.
9/11, the biggest lie. Right. I was just going to say, there's a group there if you want to discuss it and everything else. And there is one more movie coming, and well, I think that's going to be the best one, actually, James. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. You know.
Yeah,
I,
man.
I know part of the process you've gone through creating it, and I think it's going to be the most well thought out piece that you have. Even though the first one is pretty damned amazing, regardless of how green you say you were when you did it, I think it was pretty damn good. And
Thanks.
so again, people go and check it out. 9/11: The Biggest Lie, which you can find on YouTube really easily. And James Easton's name, by the way, just because somebody did ask this, spelled Easton. Okay, I had to double check myself on that real quick. Easton, James Easton. If you don't know how to spell James, I don't know how to help you. Okay, so that's that. And again, like I said, thanks again for tuning into the Ochelli Effect here on UCY.tv. Next, we're going to have a discussion with Fritz Springmeyer, which I should have had during this time, but I'm just a complete screw up lately, so I didn't get in communication with him early enough to know whether he was going to show up. But again, my friend James came through with me here, and I didn't have nothing to talk about, thankfully. Although I could have done that too. I mean, I could sit and come on here and talk about nothing, but I'd rather not do 2 hours just, you know, reading random poetry and occasionally grabbing a news story and God knows whatever else because we don't have commercials and stuff. You know what I mean? Anyway, it is all over but the shouting. Of course, the big bumper is going to kick in very shortly, and that thing is kind of obnoxious, but I'm liking it. So hopefully it doesn't blow up anybody else's speakers or anything like that. And there we go. And just for the clarification of the listener, I do know for sure that Mr. Springmeyer is ready. So because he just sent me a message. But and I don't know how Kim's going to take that. That ought to be an interesting trip because this is stuff that she's not really familiar with. And of course, I think it'll definitely be worth a listen. So anyway, James, I'm going to let you go, but thanks again. And you and I will talk off the air soon. Okay?
Sounds good.
All right.
Take care, man.
All right.
Thanks to your listeners.
Absolutely. Have a good night, sir.
All right.
So that is all there is to that. Once again, I ask you to consider different things, and I don't necessarily agree with every single thing my guest says, but I definitely think it is worth a discussion. It is worth a debate, and we do all come to the conclusion, at least if you're listening to this show, that we've all been lied to on multiple levels, and it is time to get at the truth. Your mechanisms might vary. Your beliefs in what that truth will actually lead to may vary greatly, but it is not. It is not self-evident as of yet, and until we demand it, we will not receive it. So that is something that I hope everybody keeps in mind. And now I'm going to have to go catch some air and get a drink because I got to co-host the next 2 hours on Jaded, which ought to be just in a few seconds. Of course, the Skype is still acting weird, so I don't even know. We're probably not going to be able to take phone calls during the Jaded show, but we'll see what happens. Okay. Anyway, again, everybody, thanks for tuning in. The Ochelli Effect is done for the week. That's all there is to that. And I'll see you guys on Tuesday, hopefully with a surprise guest in the second hour with Roger Landry in the first hour. Next Saturday, I should have Payday Monsanto on, and we're going to talk about the stuff that he creates, which I happen to appreciate a great deal. Also, some other interesting guests are alleged to be committed to showing up on this show this coming week, and might have to spring those on you guys at the last minute. So, thanks again. And stay tuned to UCY.tv, radio at UCY.tv. Check it all out there. And that is about all there is to that.